Hi, everyone. I'm showing you the map of the old city, the layout of the old city, just to keep it in mind, because we are not going to the old city, but to understand how close we are to the old city. Basically, we are going to be not far from the Armenian Quarter, basically below the Armenian Quarter, in the area so-called, well, let's say southwestern to the old city. Let's put it this way. So basically, we can see a little bit of the western wall of the old city, not the western wall of the Temple Mount, right? But the old city with the Jaffa Gate. And we're going to be approaching the old city on the Mount of Zion. And if you find the Armenian Quarter and the Zion Gate, so we will be very close to the Zion Gate, but we are not heading to the old city. But this just will help you understand our whereabouts. And also, just FYI, you can see with this map, I think it's a little bit more detailed and also gives us understanding of the territory just immediately outside of the walls of the old city. The Jerusalem, being located actually on an elevation, is surrounded from three sides with the valleys. And these valleys are some of the so-called green belt. In English, we refer to it as a green belt all around Jerusalem. And these lands, in various periods of time, they belonged to different cultures and nationalities, just as Jerusalem. It's switched hands so many times over the course of these 3 millennia. And this green belt is full of archaeology. Of course, it was the territory for the cattle to graze. This is also true because in the old city there was very little place for the for the farmland. Mostly it was just immediately outside of the old city, but also there was a lot of interest in archaeology because this is where many things happened, because everything would always how shall I put it? Let me think. Would revolt around the old city anyway. So the land surrounding the old city can tell us so many histories, and we're going to just listen a little bit, maybe a fraction of all those stories. So also for you to understand, they started the tour next to the St. Andrew Scots Memorial Church. And between the Scots Memorial Church and the Zion Gate of the old city is the Hinnom Valley and also the Mount Zion. It's not really a big territory at all, but the event that happened there and the people involved is enough for 10 books, maybe minimum, I would say. Also, for you to understand the terrain, you can see the Hinnom Valley. This is the deepest part of it. We're not going to be going very low this time to the Hinnom Valley, but we're going to be walking along the edges of the Hinnom Valley. And you can see just by looking at this map that there are a lot of these blue dots. The blue dots are the burial caves from different periods. And this is one of the reasons this land is referred to as hell, because of a lot of burials, thousands and thousands of burials exactly in this part of the green belt around Jerusalem. Okay, a little recap of what we saw. First and foremost, why is it called the hell? I would just like to remind you that we know it from the book of Jeremiah that some people of Judah, basically people of Judea, so Jews, Israelites, practiced idolatry, which went against the grain for sure, because Judaism was the first monotheistic religion and beliefs in many gods was a big no-no. But because for a long time the Israelites lived alongside the pagans, the Canaanites, though I would say many of them gave in to the temptation of believing in many gods and worshiping many gods and practicing all sorts of rituals, including the sacrifice of their children, and it happened exactly in the valley, in the place called the Topeth, or Valley of Ben Hinnom. Again, we don't really know who that Hinnom was, because Gay Ben Hinnom, that's the full name, actually means the Valley of the Son of Hinnom. Who this Hinnom, we don't know, but it's one of the oldest names from the Old Testament that we are given. So anyway, the Valley of Slaughter. And later on, the name changed and eventually became Hell, the Gehenna and Hell. There you go, through Aramaic, of course, because the spoken language of the times of Jesus, which is the first century common era, that's Aramaic for a long time. Hebrew was only the language of the Holy Scripture, but the spoken language was Aramaic. This is the Scots Memorial Church. We've spoken about this already, so I'm just skipping it, kind of giving you a little bit of tidbits. Plus, the recording of the previous tour is already, it's still available. I'm keeping it there for you just to help you connect the dots. And if you feel like you miss out on something, you can just, find it on my YouTube channel. The links are on the chat. Also, just to contribute to the name, the vibrance of the name, the Valley of Hell. So some of the burial sites in the area called Ket of Hinnom, which is kind of the shoulder of the valley, are the first temple period graves where the architect Gabi Barkai, he passed away just earlier this year. He together with a group of volunteering students, discovered the famous silver scrolls. They were discovered in one of the burial sites, burial caves, which are just a little bit below, over there to the right. This is all cut in the bedrock. The thing is that there used to be actually a big cave, but it collapsed. And exactly thanks to that collapse, the two silver scrolls that were kept there were just blocked by the stones, and the looters just did not find them. So the scrolls are pretty small, and for a long time the archaeologists couldn't even understand what it was, because it was all charred black. But eventually they managed to unroll it. They did carbon-14 analysis and tests, and it turned out to be dating to actually 2,700 years old, so which makes it the oldest written monument in the old Hebrew language, and it basically was a blessing. Also, there were found a lot of other burial caves that belong to various periods. A lot of those caves would be used for many generations, because land was expensive, and burial practices were pretty much economical in space, and they would be used and reused multiple times at different periods. And archaeologists, there are actually 25 burial caves only in the area called the Ket of Hinnom, and they were found multiple items dating to the first temple period, which means, let's say, from 3,000 years ago to 2.5 thousand years ago, 2.5 thousand years ago, and the second temple period starting from, let's say, 515 BCE to 70 AD, and also Roman period and even Byzantine period. How do we know that? Because of pottery that was found, because of glass vessels that were discovered. All these items, household items, especially pottery, were so sensitive to changes. So it's one of the easiest ways. If you can't, let's say, do carbon-14 test, you can also judge on the times when a certain artifact came from, judging by what's around it. And if there is some ceramics, some pottery, then that's going to be pretty helpful. And this you could find in the small exhibition room in Menachem Begin Center, named after the Prime Minister of Israel in the 70s. But since we already were there, we are skipping this. But now we are already approaching the let's say, one of the lowest sections but we are kind of on our way to the lowest of the Hinnom Valley. But not just that, but to kind of prove that the name is reasonable. There are many more burial caves, like this one, for example, also cut in the bedrock. Huge, must have belonged to someone really wealthy and influential. as a reminder of the burial practices in Judaism. Basically, the deceased were wrapped in a white fabric and left in the burial cave for the flesh to rot. And after that, a year later, the relatives would be coming and place the bones in special niches or in special bone boxes. Obviously, depending on the region and depending on the time and period, the practices differed, but in a nutshell, that's what it was. Obviously, later, closer to in the Roman period and the Byzantine period, some Jews influenced by Roman culture, or better say Hellenistic culture, they of course would be also using sarcophagi, but this was a lot more expensive and not everyone could afford it. Very few could afford, let's put it this way. Now we're even lower in the Hinnom Valley, basically in the lowest section of it. And we were there last time. We are in the biblical farm, which is the new initiative of the Israel National Parks Authority in coordination with obviously Antiquities Authority, where they recreate different ways of farming, agriculture that was used by the Israelites across the centuries, but mainly in the first and in the second temple periods. We have seen already some wine presses. This is the olive oil press that would be just crushing the olive seeds. And this is a recreation, but the threshing floors were actually found in the area. So it's not really a museum, but it's giving you a very good outline of the history in an accessible language, because every exhibit can be touched. And there are a lot of family activities. A lot of them are free of charge. There is a little farm with all the animals that used to be in the farms back then, 3,000 years ago. A lot of donkeys, of course. You won't find any pigs. Had it been, let's say, had it been the farm of the Roman period, you would have found it for sure. I mean, if it were the farm of the Roman period, then you would for sure see the pigs, but that's not the case, of course. Cows, yes. Rams, yes, for sure. Goats, easily, yes. So these are the type of animals that were used as typically as the cattle for the Israelites. So we have them there. I don't think one can be fed, but one could be seen, and it's just a nice activity for kids to get to see what the life was like. And there were so many things that are still pretty similar to what we're doing now, but we've seen that already. And yes, so one of the highlights is actually the bridge that connects the shoulders of the Hinnom Valley, or the so-called biblical hill, through over the Hinnom Valley and the Hinnom Road, the Valley of Hinnom Road, to Mount Zion. So right in front of us there, you see, this is already the Mount Zion, just like that. But so you see, we need to take the steps. We're taking steps back because we were in let's say, a much lower section of the Hinnom Valley, and we're going upstairs because we need to approach the suspension bridge. However, so we will be approaching the suspension bridge, and well, it's a bit scary to walk the bridge if you are afraid of heights, and I'm not really a big fan of heights, to be honest. But it's not the reason why we're not really taking the bridge now, because we need to go somewhere else. As we go higher, you see we're quite low. So the biblical farm is actually in the lower section, in the valley itself. So we had to go up, but we are not taking the bridge just now. I'm kind of giving you the taste of it, but stay with us, because we are going to take it anyway, because I need to take it to the Mount Zion. You see all those walls. You can see actually a lot from here. For example, you see the farm over there, right in the valley. You see the farm. You see the road as well. So the Hinnom Valley Road. Also, you see well, this is the old city. Over there to the left, you see a little bit. And yes, of course, this is the really good location for selfies. Quite spectacular. And all that side, you can see a lot more graves and also some of the villages with mainly Arab and Palestinian population. Well, also you can see a lot of cranes because there's a lot of construction going on all around Jerusalem. And basically modern Jerusalem, like Western Jerusalem, is now one big construction site. This is crazy. I remember when I was there last time, the light rail was not functioning, and not the light rail, sorry, not the light rail, but the trams were not functioning, and it almost completely paralyzed the city. Crazy. And Jerusalem is the biggest city and the most densely populated. It's more than 1 million people, clearly. Yeah, but so we're not taking the bridges yet because I'm not done with the hell. We're still on the side of the hell. And I checked, they don't have cookies. So no, this dark side doesn't have cookies, but it has fields of blood. What we're looking at are basically two villages, the most important two villages, Abu Tor, and also, well, and several villages such as Silwan, for example. So speaking of, let's say, more recent history, 20th century, 1948 war, or the Independence War, or Arab-Israeli war, depending on which narrative you prefer, but it doesn't matter. So there was a war immediately after the State of Israel was declared, which happened upon the end of the British Mandate of the Holy Land. And the war broke out just basically the next day after the Declaration of Independence was signed. And so very quickly, Jordan took over the entire old city, and the Jewish population, well, the Israeli population, didn't have access to Jerusalem at all. The area around the old city, including the Hinnom Valley, was heavily was guarded by Jordan, was also guarded by the IDF, the basically just newly established Israel Defense Forces, the Israeli army, and that land just, I would say, contributed to its ill reputation, with a lot more outrage, with a lot more violence, and definitely a lot more blood. What can I say? But we'll get back to this because now we want more blood, because we are in the place called the Field of Blood, or Akeldama. More burial sites, because the more the merrier, right? The more burial sites, the merrier. And well, this is a combination of so many different historical periods. It's very hard to say which exactly period we're looking at. So it's either First Temple or the Second Temple period, but it's also well, it was looted centuries and centuries ago. So no bones were really found there. And now mostly you can find a lot of rubbish. And you can see that the environment, you can see the setting. So this area is very close to the village of Silwan, the Arab village of Silwan. And so it's mainly the local population that pollutes this, the area of the Akeldama. Unfortunately, is it safe to walk there? Pretty much yes. Well, I didn't feel any danger whatsoever. It's the area quite often visited by tourists, when there are tourists, when there is tourism. It has been tough over the past 3 years, I would say, since October 2023. And this is when I really need to turn my headset on, because my family is back. Actually, I left my family at Marina's place because I had to head to Jerusalem. So I left my family at Marina, finish all the foods, and took my personal jet to Jerusalem to join all of you. Good. Yes. So what was I talking about? Okay. Yes. So why is it called Akeldama? We need to go back to the New Testament.
So in the book of Matthew, they tell the story of Judas. So Judas the Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus and who was paid 30, who was paid, silver pieces. We don't even know, it's not even mentioned 30 at this point, but the silver pieces. And then he regretted having betrayed Jesus and returned the coins to the Sanhedrin, but the high priests were not. Well, they did not take the money. They couldn't be sacrificed in the temple. So instead, they bought the plot of land that was called the Potter's Field to bury strangers in. I'm providing here the quote from Matthew 27, verse 3-8. So they were buried strangers. In some versions, you can come across the strangers actually as it is interpreted differently. Some claim strangers as the Goy population, that is non-Jewish population, but there's actually another theory which might be plausible. Misha, I'm gonna need water, please. Thank you. Too much talking, not enough water. Sorry, guys. It's interesting about the coins, and especially about the number 30, because there are sources claiming there were 30 silver pieces. And it's interesting. We know that the New Testament contains a lot of information that's kind of connected to New Testament contains a lot of facts and events and different episodes that are connected to the Old Testament, and they are considered a prefiguration. And there is a prefiguration that you can come across here in this situation, because in the book of Exodus, for example, it says, if the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull is to be stoned. So here we have clearly the price list for the murder of a slave. So the one who was guilty in that had to pay fine for 30 silver shekels. Obviously, it's not the new Israeli shekel, but the old Israeli shekel. Shekel comes from the word to weight. Mishkal means weight, so it's kind of this shortish, root refers to all the words related to weights and measures. Or, for example, here in the book of Zechariah, there's also an interesting line here. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the handsome price at which they valued me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them to the potter at the house of the Lord. So it also could be I told them, if you think it's best, give me my pay, but if not, keep it. So they paid me 30 pieces of silver. Well, kind of the appreciation, maybe. And so there are a lot of these 30 shekels mentioned across the Old Testament. And maybe, just maybe, there is this correlation because, Jesus was killed and he was, he was treated wrongly, not exactly as a slave, but definitely there is some sort of correlation in many ways. So this could be the prefiguration. It's just a theory. I'm not really interpreting it for you, but this correlation is noticed by many specialists. So I'm not here to convince you. I'm just saying that there is such an idea. But also there is another theory. So it's either like we know it from the book of Matthew, that it was the high priest that decided to use that pieces of silver to buy the land to bury the strangers. In the book of Acts, we have a little different story that probably is the best fit for the name. So now this man, meaning Judas, purchased a field with the reward of iniquity, and failing headlong, he burst asunder in the midst, and all his bowels gushed out. And it was known unto all the dwellers at Jerusalem, insomuch as that field is called in their proper tongue Akeldama, that is to say, the field of blood. And so Akeldama, it comes from the spoken language of the people of those days. That is the I mentioned it already, Aramaic. Sorry, it's just too much carbs hit the brain. Well, sorry, Gregory, it's definitely the carbs. What is the other explanation to me forgetting the name of the language? Naturally, I don't know. Anyway, so whether we believe Matthew or we stick to the version of the Book of Acts, that's not really a very pleasant sight. Basically, it's a cemetery. So starting from at least the Second Temple period, that is the times of Jesus, this area turned into a cemetery. But we know, and archaeology proves the fact that there also were a lot of graves that were much older, which contributes to the theory that it actually was always hell. It was always this site with a lot of burials ever since the First Temple period, as Jeremiah mentioned in his books. So now let's have a look at all these graves. You can see definitely man-made, how carefully it was all hewn in the bedrock, in the soft sandstone in Jerusalem. And there are a lot of them. There are dozens and dozens of burial sites, big caves with a lot of niches. Again, it had been looted a long time ago, so no bones were discovered, no valuables, but Jews would never really place any valuables together with the bodies because it was never really necessary. And well, they would be placed, at least in the First Temple period, there would be placed the silver scrolls. Well, those who could afford it, there would be placed some blessings, but not really, silver or golden jewelry, nothing like that. No personal belongings. But there was something interesting discovered on one of the walls. It was in the burial cave number 4, if I'm not mistaken. There was actually cut the name Ariston from Apamea. Apamea is the town in the modern day Syria. And this is when it really gets interesting, because we actually know of a certain Ariston from the town of Apamea, because this name is mentioned in Mishnah. Mishnah is a collection of written texts about the Jewish life from after the destruction of the Second Temple and after Jews dispersed all around the world. What we read about Ariston brought his first fruit from Apamea, and they accepted from him because they said one who buys a field in Syria is as one who buys a field in the outskirts of Jerusalem, which basically said that Ariston was a highly respected Jew, and his name was found in the burial cave in the area that was used as a cemetery for strangers. It's minded, this is not the Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives, yes, for 3,000 years has been the Jewish burial site, like the most prestigious one, and it's the most expensive one. But the Potter's Field, next to the Valley of Hinnom, where a lot of idolatry was performed, long time ago, but anyway, that's really interesting. But remember, strangers. Strangers doesn't have to mean goy, which means non-Jews. We'll talk about goy as soon as well, but it doesn't have to be just about non-Jews. It could be the Jews, but not from Jerusalem or its environs, because we know it is a common fact that Jews from all over wanted to be buried as close as possible to Jerusalem, regardless of where they lived. There have been found a lot of inscriptions and other artifacts proving the fact that Jews from diaspora, whenever they could, they would go to Jerusalem. And it is highly likely that it could have been that very Ariston that mentioned in the Mishnah. Don't really know. Me being a little bit ridiculous, but really enjoying these beautiful burial caves. I think here in this area, and also in the Valley of Jehoshaphat, there are some of the most beautiful burial caves around Jerusalem. If you ask me about some of the most amazing burial sites, that's definitely up north, like Bet She'arim, for example. That's a cemetery full of ornate, elaborate sarcophagi, all located in the caves. Incredible. I did a tour of Bet She'arim, by the way, so it's available for my sponsors. Yeah. So I was just being ridiculous, but anyway. So speaking of this land, I mentioned that there are a lot of Arab population often visit these burial caves, and that's just kind of what's going on. But actually, this is a private property. This land belongs to a Greek monastery of Saint Onofrius. This land belongs to the Greek Patriarchate of Jerusalem, starting from 1890s. By the way, also discovered some illustrations of the 19th century of Akeldama. So the name is known for thousands of years. This is, by the way, so if we continue walking the same way, but just continue walking, we will reach the St. Onofrius monastery. You can see it's over there, not really far. And I've never been there in person, unfortunately, so definitely need to make up for this. Is a female monastery, so technically it can be visited, but I have never really got round to it, but hopefully I will. And the Akeldama also belongs to the Greek monastery, but this area is open for visit. And we spoke about the strangers, right? So the burials for strangers. Actually, this is also true already in the Common Era during the Crusader period. So we are talking 1099 and 1200. Let's put it this way. So this, let's put it like this: 1099, the Crusaders took over Jerusalem, and up until 1187, and then they were kicked out of Jerusalem. And oops, sorry. There we go. And they lose control of Jerusalem at all, and only remain on the coastal plain. And we know of several sites associated with the Crusaders in Akko, in Haifa, not far from Tel Aviv. There is the area called Apollonia National Park, and several others. Let's say along the shoreline. There were also lands in Ashdod, in Ashkelon. There were several. Well, there was basically a lot of Crusader forts along the coastal plain, just along the shoreline. Anyway, but here during the Crusader period was the land that belonged to the Knights of the Hospitallers. And the Hospitallers, let me just make sure I'm aware of the time. Yeah, okay, I should stop showing you the video. I'm sharing pics with myself so you could see how massive and epic this arch is. So during the Crusader period, the Crusaders established the hospitals, hence the name Hospitallers, and those people who died on them would be buried here. So this land outside of the city walls, and that's important to remember to understand that Nobody would bury anyone in the old city. It made no sense, and it was completely against all the rules of sanitation and whatnot. But one may think, but that's really far from the old city. Not really. The thing is that during the times of the Crusaders, Mount Zion, which is very close from here, just across the bridge, was included in the city limits, in the old city limits. So it was very close. And this was, so the building with the arch was actually the charnel house. And these burial caves were incorporated in the building of the charnel house. And um, it was basically filled up with bones, mainly those who died from plague or other contagious disease would be buried here, not in the caves. The bodies would be just thrown. Mainly, the theory has it that these that the bodies would be just stacked one on one another. Possible, really possible. So obviously it collapsed. There were several earthquakes, and well, so much time has passed since then. But this epic archway, obviously restored and fortified, is still here. And just imagine how massive this building must have been that incorporated the caves cut in the bedrock. That's impressive. Just imagine that during the first and the second temple period, this was just a cave for one family, like one cave with a lot of burial niches. I'm not going into details about the let's say differences in the burial practices throughout the periods. I've kind of mentioned some of them, like some of the basic ones, like bullet points, but in general, we're not going into detail. So now that we have discovered the field of blood, we can finally set out on our journey above the Hinnom Valley, and we will see a little bit around from both sides. If you're afraid of heights, just close your eyes and listen to what I'm saying, just like that. No, when it's windy, the bridge dances, and also it's built so that it even produces sound when it moves. It's like it's whistling or something like humming. Like you can hear a little bit of humming. It's quite pacifying, to be honest. Anyway, to that side below us, you can see the biblical farm. You can see the animals. There was also a camel, by the way. I saw the camel once, and the last time I filmed it, I didn't see a camel. I didn't see the camel, but maybe it was just chilling elsewhere. I don't know. Oh yeah, those are camels. Yeah, those are camels. So that was good. But I don't remember them. I only remember the camel I saw, well, in winter. But anyway, so those are camels. It's good. Look at all those caves. This is just one cave. Remember, I took you before going to the biblical farm. I took you to one cave. It was just one cave. But look, there's actually so many more burial caves, and they are all over the valley. No, any of the three valleys around Jerusalem have this many. Only this one has just a record-breaking number of number of caves. The biblical hill is just all that way. That's where we were. That's where, well, you couldn't see it from there, but very close there was this St. Andrew's Scots Memorial Church. And we are approaching Mount Zion. So finally, we are done with hell. Let's just go. Let's just get the hell out of there and join the territory of the old city, because it's not the old city now, but at some points during the 3,000 years of Jerusalem as a city, well, Mount Zion was a couple of times included in its let's say premises. This is the layout, and actually, speaking of the layout of the old city and how it looked and what it looked during across the thousands of years, we actually know all the three big stages of the city fortifications. There is so-called first, second, and third wall. It doesn't mean that the third wall was the first wall was the first one built during the times of King David. No, it's not like that. It's basically because Josephus, the Jewish historian for the Romans, mentioned it as one of the fortifications of Jerusalem at that time. But what you can see, I'm sure you can recognize a little bit of familiar Temple Mount, a little bit of the sections of the modern day Old City, but also you can see the first wall. So this first wall would go all around a big territory that is now considered the outside of Jerusalem. But back in the days, you can see it encompasses the city of David. It encompasses, so you see the Central Valley, it encompasses also the Mount Zion. So it's there for a long time. Mount Zion was included into the old city limits, and it was before Common Era. But we know that during the Byzantine period, that is the 5th century Common Era, Empress Eudokia was she lived in Jerusalem and was in charge of the Christian sites all around Jerusalem and its environs. She was actually the wife of the Eastern Roman Emperor Theodosius II. And she was well loved by all the Christians. She did a lot. She constructed a lot of pilgrimage sites and important landmarks for Christians, of course. And she also worked tirelessly to secure the important lands for Christianity. And she also fortified the walls of Mount Zion. And now we have crossed already the bridge. We basically stepped, like, I don't know, we walked up a little bit, like 3 minutes, and we already seen these excavations. So we believe that here we are actually looking at 3 different layers of 3 different walls, such as the wall of Eudokia, then which is above. Then we have another wall, much thicker. It kind of stands out a little bit. The first wall, that is the Second Temple period, and it's highly likely, a lot of archaeologists claim that there is another wall beneath, actually the most first wall, so to speak, from the First Temple period. Because during the First Temple period, this the Mount Zion was also included into this section, into the complex of fortifications of Jerusalem as well. So, but now this land belongs to the Greek Patriarchate, and as far as I understand, there is still some excavations going on. This area is not really accessible to public, but there is another remarkable area, the Franciscan Catholic Cemetery on Mount Zion. It's like 2 more minutes walk from the land of the Greek Patriarchate. And this cemetery contains about 400 graves of Christians who lived in Jerusalem and its environs. But there is one very special, not only in Jerusalem, obviously, but in the Holy Land. But there is one very special grave that, for some reason, doesn't really have flowers, even if they are dried flowers. It only has stones. And you must figure out whose grave I'm talking about, but I'm going to say it again and again and again. There is the grave of Oskar Schindler, the Oskar Schindler, of course, the one that is recognized as the righteous among the nations by Yad Vashem Museum, which is the most important Holocaust memorial museum in the world, but obviously mainly in Israel. And this is I'm not going to be retelling you the story of Oskar Schindler. That's not really the point of the tour, and we don't really have the time. And there is a couple of other places I want to show you before we wrap this up and before we wrap up with the Hinnom Valley and Mount Zion. The stones are here because Jews, as you know, it's not common to place flowers on the graves. The tradition is to put stones because we don't really know why. Probably because there were no really flowers in the deserts, and stones are not that easy to be carried away with the wind. I also placed my stone there. Oskar Schindler wanted to be buried in Israel. She visited Israel several times after the Second World War. She helped save more than 1,000 Jewish lives. Well, 1,200 Jewish lives. And yes, it's despite the fact that he was actually a member of a Nazi party. And yes, he basically got in charge of a factory of enamel products, and that was taken over by the Nazis from a Jew. And yes, he first exploited Jews because they were cheap workforce. They were not paid for their work, but he paid to the SS. But despite all that, at some point, he just realized what was going on. And he chose not to turn his blind eye on that. He risked everything, his own life, but he helped save 1,200 lives, and more than 4,000 people out of that number moved to the land of Israel, moved to Israel after the Second World War, and he was frequently invited by him, but he was frequently invited by them to Israel, and his body was brought to Israel in 1970s. In January this year, when I was in Israel, I did a Holocaust themed tour, Holocaust Memorial, which is not really that known even by the locals. Believe it or not, by a lot of my friends in Israel had no idea of another Holocaust memorial than Yad Vashem Museum. Everyone knows Yad Vashem, but there is actually the Holocaust like cellar, something like that. So it's a Holocaust cellar. It's a memorial, but it's not the museum. It's not really this place was built in just almost immediately after the establishment of the State of Israel in the 1950s, and it was built as a mourning place, not as a memorial several decades later, like Yad Vashem. But it was arranged by the hands of the people who survived the camps, who lost their families in the concentration camps. And this is a very small memorial, very small mourning place. That's why it's actually called the Holocaust chambers, cellars, chambers, Holocaust chambers. Yeah, Mataf HaShoah, the chambers of the Holocaust. Well, which Jews don't really use the word Holocaust in Hebrew. They say it's the Shoah, which means a catastrophe. And here, I did a very detailed tour of that memorial, so I'm not going into this, and it's also very difficult. But I think it's so symbolic. You see the stone plaques, you see the stone plates, and it's written on them the names of neighborhoods, shtetls, synagogues, and communities that perished during the times of Holocaust. They were placed by survivors, by the descendants and relatives and friends of those who perished. And here many of our fellow Jewish viewers can find the places they are related to, where their relatives come from. Again, I have a very detailed tour of that, and I'll be happy to share it with you. If you're my sponsor, you know where to find these links. If you can't locate them, let me know. And even if you're not my sponsor, but you just really want to get access to this particular video, just contact me. We will sort it out, of course. And I think it's so symbolic that we have been through hell. And then we would still be eager to go up, to go towards the higher place. And now we are on Mount Zion. Yes, Mount Zion. I would like to remind you this fact that Mount Zion, this name stuck to this particular mount in the, well, first Byzantine period, but mainly in the Crusader period, because they thought that they saw a mountain and they first that this was actually the city of David and Jerusalem, but it was not. But the name stuck. Well, which is okay. Who cares? But well, we know that Zion is actually, the place, the home, the ancestral home. And on that very ancestral home on Mount Zion, there is this memorial to, well, to the victims of the Holocaust. I think it is symbolic. And Mount Zion is also important because throughout the armistice period from 1948 to 1967, the entire old city was under control of the Jordan. So the Jews who moved to Israel had no access to the Temple Mount, to the Western Wall, even to the Jewish Quarter. It was the closest place they could get to, and to be as close as possible. Also, in the chambers, you can find a lot of artifacts like the charred Torah scrolls, with the blood stains on them, a lot of praying kits and phylacteries that were discarded and damaged, the uniforms that Jews wore in the camps. I mean, just look at all these things. It was all preserved and placed in the memorial. But there was another reason, and it's the last thing I'm going to talk about, that also on the Mount Zion, there is a place referred to as the King David's tomb. There are a lot of speculations whether it is the place, obviously, but it according to the tradition, it's an important pilgrimage site. It's a very important place of place for Jews, also for Muslims, because King David is considered as a prophet in Islam. That's why it's called Nabi Dawood, Makam Nabi Dawood in Arabic. And it also happens to be a very important place for Christians, because the Christian tradition claims that this place was the place of the Last Supper. So the room of cenacle is located in one of the same place. This is Jerusalem, baby. One and the same place can be of vital importance to the three religions at one and the same time. Well, this place, when during the times of the Ottoman rule, this was a mosque with a minaret. You see that, and I absolutely love these illustrations. Just look how green it was. Also, there is this photograph of a slightly different period, that's somewhat 1890s, I believe. So all around it looks pretty much barren. That's simply because the Ottomans didn't really develop these territories at all. We know so much about, let's say, about the events that happened 3,000 years ago, about the event that happened 2,000 years ago, but we know so little about the 400 years almost. Okay, the Ottoman period lasted for 400 years exactly, but let's say we don't really know much about the first 340 years or so, something like that. That's really crazy. That's really crazy. But there's a photos of the King David's burial site, and just in a different section of the same compound, there is the room of cenacle, room of the Last Supper, where the famous Last Supper, according to this tradition, mainly Catholic tradition, is believed to have taken place. But since this place remained for a long time a mosque, you can find there a mihrab, which is the praying niche facing Mecca, and also it is believed that it was built by the Crusaders, hence the vaulted arches. right? The arches and the walls that are very characteristic of the Crusader period. So it's kind of a mix of different architectural styles, of different epochs, of different traditions that kind of blend in one place. So free religion, it's all so much intertwined, and Jerusalem itself is so much intertwined, and the Holy Land itself, Israel itself, has so much, that is absolutely essential, absolutely vital for the three religions. And I just can't really wrap my mind around it. Why keep shedding blood if there is definitely another way? There must be another way. Yeah, but who am I, to say that, right? Thank you, Annette. Let me turn the chat back on. Let me know if you have any questions. And yeah, so the chat is back on. Thank you so much for all your hearts. For those who joined us a little later, hi, by the way, to those of whom I didn't have a chance to say hi. I have not had time to schedule any more tours for the upcoming weekend. It's been a little bit hectic here, but I promise I will make it up to you shortly. I'm planning some one-off events with my mom. I'll be going to Batumi again for another week, and I'm hoping that one more very important person is going to be joining us there. And so that's why I will be scheduling more tours, but I need, a few things to finalize before it happens. But I will be keeping you posted on my website. I'm going to share the links again. You can subscribe to my newsletter to be updated. Also, right now you can find my tours on the free calendars. And thank you so much once again for your onboarding on the live stream events. So you can find also a lot of news on their Facebook community. And I will be keeping you updated also on my website. So, and on my socials. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. I hope you have enjoyed this tour and you found it interesting. I've put like so much energy into this that I feel like I've walked all the way, from the Ket of Hinnom to the Mount Zion. It's like not even I walked all the bridge, but I kind of went down to the valley and then up on the slopes of Mount Zion. It's like I've just walked all the way, and I did. I have done it multiple times, but yes. Thanks, Anna. Very interesting. I'm glad you didn't get to Jerusalem on an empty stomach. Mark, thank you so much for your coffee. How was your meal? Thanks to the entire family. Well, my meal was very quick because I only had about 15 minutes. So I munched a couple mohinkales and also had some sweet trees that Marina baked for us. So yeah, it was good. My family stayed there for a little longer. They only returned like half an hour ago. So I think I'm just I hope that they have brought something for me, like a doggy bag. Woof. I hope so. But even if not, I'm really happy. And if you missed that tour, you absolutely, have to watch the recording. It's like almost like a little more than 2 hours of pure fun with my family, with Marina, in a beautiful 19th century apartment in the heart of Tbilisi. This is the link to watch the recording. It's already available. Thank you so much, everyone who joined. They got the cakes and the compote exactly, which I did. Yeah, I didn't get to try the compote. Good thing you had all those carbs first. Exactly. I needed those carbs. I needed that for sure to walk all the way from hell to Mount Zion. Absolutely. Yes. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. You have all the links where to find my tours, where to find ways to support me, be it a PayPal or buy me a coffee. All your support and interest in my tours means a lot to me. And yes, and thank you so much for sharing postcards as well from my tours. This is lovely. This is precious. I will see you again very soon on my regular tours every weekend. I will schedule a Jerusalem tour, or maybe not Jerusalem tour shortly, I promise. But definitely a tour of Israel. And I'm hoping to be in Israel either in October after the holidays or maybe November. It depends on several, private arrangements, but I will be keeping you posted. And of course, whenever I'm in Israel, I'm going to be doing a lot of live events. And hopefully this time, Dolly, we get to see each other, right? because we just have to. Thank you, everyone. Have a great week ahead. I'm joining my family, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for everything. Bye bye. And I will be sharing the recording